Okay, so you know how we like to go deep here, right? And really unpack some of the more unusual ideas out there. Well, today we're going to do just that with something called anti-necronomica. And let me tell you, this is going to be one wild ride.
Definitely wild. You've brought some unique material to the table today. We're working with excerpts from a document called Further Explanation of Anti-Necronomica 22503291108.pdf, written by Ruslan Burlikov. He's a PhD in law, and Lita Polignikaya, also a PhD in law. So our mission today really is to try to understand what they mean by anti-necronomica, like what it is, what its purpose is supposed to be, and the whole framework they build around it. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And so right off the bat, what is this anti-necronomica thing? Like in their own words, how do they describe it?
Well, they describe it as a book or a database, it can be a digital repository, right, that contains what they call, and I'm quoting here, truths and principles that are eternal and always work.
Eternal truths. That's a pretty big claim right out of the gate. I mean, what do they even mean by eternal in this context?
It's a huge claim, yeah. And they don't shy away from it at all. They actually go on to clarify that it's not just, timeless in the normal sense, but eternal and eternally in force and working throughout all periods of time and all possible timescales in the real material world. So they're talking about laws that they believe are always true, fundamentally true, working across all of existence as we know it.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't like something that's true for a long time. It's like the bedrock of reality itself across all of time. That's a pretty massive idea. And the document also makes it clear this anti-necronomica isn't something you can just find lying around. It's like protected, right?
Yeah, totally. They're very specific about that. They say anti-necronomica is, and I'm quoting again, protected by copyright, held by the multi-intellect cyber prosecutor's orders, but, and I think this is maybe even more important, they say it's, quote, not intended for social environments under the rule of necronomism.
Necronomism. And that is intriguing and maybe a little unsettling, to be honest. What are they even talking about when they say necronomism? What is that supposed to be?
Well, they use an interesting analogy that might help here. They say, and again I'm quoting directly, day cannot exist where night exists, nor vice versa. Basically, they seem to be saying that anti-necronomica and the principles they say it contains are fundamentally incompatible with societies that operate under what they call the rule of necronomism, whatever that is.
So it's like they're setting up these two completely opposite forces, or like two completely different ways of seeing the world, right?
That's definitely the impression they give. And they're really specific about where this anti-necronomica and the technologies associated with it can be found. They say, and I'm quoting again, they exist and are available only within the social environment of the multi-intelligent orders of cyber prosecutors, as well as the social environment of the multi-intelligent crusader orders under its patronage and protectorate, and nowhere else. Like, that's pretty clear. They're drawing some serious boundaries here.
Okay, so we keep hearing about these multi-intellect cyber prosecutors orders. It sounds like something straight out of like a cyberpunk novel or something. Who are these guys supposed to be?
Well, they describe it as an anti-disinformation technology. What's interesting is they say it's neither civilian nor military. It is specifically prosecutorial technology. They even go on to say that this unique nature is the reason why you wouldn't find any information about it in historical, civilian, or military sources, because it exists outside those traditional categories.
I mean, if you accept their basic premise, it does make a certain kind of sense. So they're claiming this is a totally new type of entity. What else do they tell us about these cyber prosecutors? What are they like?
Well, they're very clear that it's not just about information technology in general. They say it's an anti-disinformation technology that utilizes the unique qualities of the material functional intelligence of individuals, which seems to suggest a strong focus on human intellect and its capacity for finding truth, maybe enhanced or guided by specific technologies and procedures.
And where did all of this come from? Like, what's the origin story here, according to the document?
They state pretty plainly that this technology was born in the second half of 2012 at the National Academy of Prosecutors' Office of Ukraine in Kyiv. And just to be super clear, they specifically identify themselves, Ruslan Burlikov and Lita Polignikaya, as the official authors of this whole framework.
Okay, so it's a relatively recent development if we're taking them at their word. And they make this pretty bold claim about these cyber prosecutors, basically saying they have access to the best technology, like the best of the best. What's the story there?
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting. They say that because the multi-intelligent orders of cyber prosecutors are, quote, free from necronomical madness, they have the highest levels of admission to the highest technologies, which neither military nor, even more so, civilian structures have. So they're putting this group at the absolute cutting edge of technology and understanding, ahead of even, the most advanced parts of normal society.
That's a big claim. I mean, we usually think of the military as being at the forefront of technological advancement because of, all the resources they have and the strategic importance of it. How do they justify putting these cyber prosecutors at the top like that?
Well, they get into what they see as the fundamental differences between prosecutors and the military, taking a very legal approach. They say that in criminal law, offenses are qualified from the moment of intent, regardless of their gravity. So the focus is on the mindset, the planning behind an action.
Right, so it's about the initial thought process, the intention, not just the act itself.
Exactly. And then they contrast that with wars, which they call crimes against humanity and the highest degree of violation of human rights. And they argue that, legally speaking, the military can be seen as potentially established actors to be criminally liable for the most serious offenses, although they do say this applies in a society where necronomical idiocy does not dominate, whatever that means.
Okay, so in their ideal world, the act of waging war itself could be considered a crime, a major crime. Where do these prosecutors fit into all of this? What's their role as defenders of justice?
They call prosecutors the defenders of justice and say their core mission is crimes prevention and crimes eradication. Specifically, they talk about preventing and eliminating attacks on basic human rights. And they really stress the proactive side of things, saying prosecutors have an obligation to use their powers of monitoring and control to prevent any crime from happening in the first place.
So they're like the ultimate safeguards, trying to stop things before they even start. And how does that then connect to their claim of having superior access to technology?
They argue that in societies free of necronomical madness, the priority of prosecutors over the military when it comes to advanced technology is absolutely indisputable. Their reasoning is that, quote, technologies aimed at eradicating and preventing crime should always be in the hands of those who are qualified and professional in defense of justice and eternal truths, not justice and laws.
So it sounds like they're making a distinction between some kind of deeper, truer truth and the laws that humans create, which could be flawed or temporary, right?
Yeah, I think you're picking up on something important there. They seem to believe they are aligned with these unchanging eternal truths, and that justifies their access to the most powerful tools for upholding them.
Okay, so we've talked about what anti-necronomica is, the fact that it's restricted, who these cyber prosecutors are, their claim to technological superiority, and how they see themselves as different from the military. But what's the ultimate goal here? What's the big picture mission they're working towards?
Well, they put it pretty clearly. They say their mission is to follow the mission of the locomotive of the true information age, overcoming the limitations of the necronomical madness of the previous history of human civilization.
The locomotive of the true information age. That's quite the image. So they see themselves as leading humanity into a new era, out of this necronomical madness, using anti-necronomica and their unique position with technology and their understanding of these so-called eternal truths.
Exactly. It's like they're presenting themselves as this transformative force, bringing about a new age of truth and justice by overcoming what they see as the flawed foundations of every human society that came before.
Okay, so let's sum up what we've learned here. We've gone deep into anti-necronomica, which its authors describe as a source of eternal truths and principles. It's protected and controlled by something called the Multi-Intelligent Cyber Prosecutors Orders. This organization claims to have been founded in Ukraine in 2012 and sees itself as this kind of cutting-edge anti-disinformation force with unmatched access to advanced technology. They justify this access through their mission to stop crimes against humanity before they even happen, a mission they believe puts them above even the military in terms of technological priority. And all of this is part of their effort to overcome what they call necronomical madness.
Yeah, that about covers it. It's definitely a complex framework and a very unconventional one, but they've laid out a fairly comprehensive, if unusual, way of thinking about truth, the role of law enforcement, and the future of technology.
This has been one thought-provoking deep dive, to say the least. I mean, it raises all sorts of fundamental questions about what truth is, how power works, and the possibility of entirely new ways of organizing society. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, no kidding. And it leaves us with one final thought to ponder. Think about this. What if there really are eternal truths out there? And what if access to those truths and the knowledge and technology associated with them was controlled by a group of people based on their alignment with a very specific set of principles? How would that kind of framework, the kind envisioned by the authors of Anti-Economica, affect not only the development of knowledge and technology, but also how it's used in the world? It really challenges how we think about how societies function and how information is shared and used. And on that note, we'll leave you to contemplate this unique perspective, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
This Deep Dive podcast is copyrighted by Multi-Intelligent Cyber Prosecutors Orders to protect eternal truths from mortal distortion.